Good afternoon all and welcome to that session on port and environment. I will have the pleasure this afternoon to discuss with Artur Alves. Artur is the co-founder of MARLO, a consulting and IT company specialized in the area of transport and logistics. MARLO is currently involved in the design and development of logistic single windows involving all Portuguese partners. Artur, could you please describe us briefly what is MARLO?
Yeah, MARLO is a company that has worked for many years in the area of transport and logistics, as you said, both as a consultant and also as a technology provider. And in the last couple of years, we have been very much involved in designing new and innovative solutions to promote what we call collaborative supply chains, which means taking digital solutions to make sure that a specific type of inefficiencies that we found normally in supply chains is resolved, is handled, just by making sure that all the stakeholders in a given supply chain are cooperating. Then they are sharing information about planning, about execution, and about everything that is related to the process. And we have achieved quite interesting benefits. I mean, we have cut significantly carbon footprints in many supply chains. We have also made relevant cost savings to many shippers and transport integrators. And in that process, we have been we ran for a public tender, which was launched by the Portuguese Association of Ports, to develop this concept, the logistic single window, which is basically a very significant evolution of a concept which was called the port single window. So this is the third version of the port single window, completely redesigned, not just to support what is typically about this port community system, which is all the relationships around the port area, but now we are extending the scope of operations to cover the entire supply chain, which is related to the Portuguese ports. And in this case, also bringing all these ideas about making sure that we create collaboration and digital mechanisms that allow all the stakeholders in these multimodal processes to cooperate and to become a lot more efficient.
You mentioned you're a solution provider, so my guess is if all the ports are getting together, they were looking for solution for their problems. Can you tell us a little bit more about what are the current problems for your partners?
Well, logistics, as in today's world, we are in the 21st century, and we have realized by working with a lot of logistics companies that it's one of the industries where we find a very set of very relevant inefficiencies, which were supposed to be solved by, well, probably many years ago, but they weren't. And the reason for that is that, by definition, logistics is a collaborative process. It involves a lot of companies. And it's not easy to digitally integrate the processes of many companies. It's expensive, it's complex, and usually it takes some time. And one of the ways to do it is to create the mechanisms to make sure that a specific company which is working in this environment can connect, can share information, can share planning, and can share tracking with all the others. First of all, without having to replace what he already has. So most of them already have their IT systems, but these have not been designed to cooperate. So the first part is to make sure that they can cooperate with everyone else without having to throw away what they have already invested in. And the second part is making sure that they have the right mechanisms to do this integration at low cost and into a very simple process. Once we solve that, then the next point is how how do we support these companies into connecting to make sure that the inefficiencies are solved? And just for you to have an idea of the size and the dimension of these inefficiencies, in Europe, we know, for instance, in the case of road transport, and we have numbers for the road transport, and we don't have detailed numbers for the maritime sector, but it's probably similar. We know that only 52% of the available capacity of trucks traveling in Europe is used, which means that 48% of the travels are, or 48% of the capacity which is running is only carrying air. So you probably can imagine what is the cost of that and what is the impact also for the society in terms of greenhouse emissions and so on. So if we could somehow use that capacity a lot more efficient, just by making sure that everyone shares the right information so that we can optimize the way that the loading units are filled in to make sure that the resources that are used to doing it are completely synchronized and aligned, then we may have extremely relevant benefits for not only for these companies but for the society as a whole. And the European Commission has estimated that the cost of this inefficiency is 160,000 million euros a year just for the transport companies, not counting all the externalities about greenhouse emissions and so on. And what we believe is that probably 30 to 40% of that of those losses can be really saved by applying digital technologies to do it. So that's the main motivation. There are extremely relevant gains on this process.
So basically you're shifting the business from a competitor's model to a collaborative system, because like 10 or 20 years ago, having those numbers of very low usage for road transportation would have been a good news for rail or for sea shipping, because he said, okay, my competitor is not doing that well, but now they're working together to bridge those gaps and make sure that everything is optimized, even though they used to be competitors. So this is a brand new vision.
Yes. I mean, we are coming into a situation where it's no longer sustainable to not think like that, to not cooperate, to not align and synchronize business process across the supply chain. So any player which is not taking on that spirit will be out of the game in a few years, because the savings that he can get just by cooperating will make him a lot more competitive than the ones that do not. So that's pretty basic math.
And do you have, because we're talking about that synergy, the gain we can achieve, do you have an example of one company, you know, entering into that new way to do shipping?
Yes, the part of the technology that we are using in the concepts that we are using to develop the logistic single window have already been applied into several supply chains across Europe. We have a very interesting case. We were initially MARLO. We were initially, well, a couple of years we were approached by a very known company, 3M, and also by another very well-known company, DHL. And they have made us an interesting challenge. 3M told us, well, today we are shipping our products across Europe, and as you know, 3M is a giant. They are, in terms of volume of business, they are the same size as Nike. So they have millions of products that are handled every day across Europe. And they told us, well, the average truck fill rates that we are having and the average container rates that we are having across Europe, it's around 40%. So we are paying to carry a lot of air, and we don't want it. So we believe that if you guys can work with us and with our transport service providers, some are road carriers, others are warehouse managers, others are sea transport companies, if you guys can create a platform that allows them to align their process and cooperate instead of each one thinking about their own optimization, I'm pretty sure that we can have relevant savings. Well, 4 years later, we are running the entire 3M supply chain across Europe, and not only we had very relevant savings, we really cut 35% of their transport cost, which is the type of savings that you don't see often. It was really huge. It's a couple of million euros we are saving them on transport a year. But more important than that, we just realized that we cut their carbon footprint for the distribution process by approximately 50%. So this was huge. And all we did was just making sure that we created a solution that can build the bridge between all the stakeholders in a specific supply chain, and we make sure that they can cooperate, they can share tracking information, they can share planning events, they can, the platform takes a few decisions in real time. So basically we stopped having trucks that were 40% full to trucks that are now between 80 and 90%. So yeah.
It's very impressive. I can understand that 3M is looking to optimize with their partners, but DHL, they have their own planes, their own trucks, and even them, they're looking for improvements and solutions?
Yes. Basically, they also need to get into this cooperation wave. Obviously, they have a huge investment into their own IT and resource infrastructure. But in the end of the day, when they are part of a network of providers for a big giant, then they also need to somehow enter into this game as a cooperative player. So they were one of the driving forces initially because they believed in this. And they also participated in the development. And the reality is that this type of technology is being used across other business of DHL because they realized that, well, actually our trucks, if we use this for all our operations, we will transport less. So it's, well, we can lose part of the business, but the thing is that when they are bidding for a specific client, if they can do the same volume with a lot less trucks, then they are a lot more competitive, and they will win it.
This is very interesting. You mentioned it. I think one big part of those success is connected to IT. What are the challenges with IT? You mentioned it a little bit earlier, that different systems and everything. So what are the challenges and what type of solutions did you provide to enable that collaboration?
Well, going to the logistics single window, we are, the first thing is I think that the most relevant innovation about the logistics single window is, I think it's the first port community system type of platform that is being designed, it's still being designed and developed, completely focusing on collaboration across multiple transport modes. So which means that we need, and we are working hard to create a cooperative model where all the stakeholders in the multimodal chains which are related to the Portuguese ports. And why the Portuguese ports? Because it's the owners of this solution, and it's the entities that are driving this. And in this case, all the stakeholders that relate to the corridors that are served by the Portuguese ports can be supported by a digital model that is built to foster their cooperations, meaning that, first of all, we are going to share all the information needed to make sure that the full process of delivering the freight that is passing by the Portuguese ports, the relevant information is shared by all the stakeholders involved. For instance, the ship owner is sharing information about when the ship is coming which means that that information is relevant for the terminal operator to organize its resources and to optimize its operations. Then the process comes into the land side, and we are dealing with, for instance, the rail operators. And once again, they are sharing their planning information. That information is shared with the platform, which is then shared with everyone which is relevant for that operation. For instance, the logistic platforms, the terminal operators, and any type of other stakeholders, such as freight forwarders, can have the relevant bits of that information that is necessary to make its operations more efficient. For instance, the owner of the logistic platform wants to know at what time will the container arrive, because if he knows that, he can also organize its resources to receive it, and therefore optimizing his costs. And the cargo owner would like to have visibility over his process. So we are also providing visibility information to the companies that are coordinating the full supply chain, such as freight forwarders or transport integrators. And in turn, this information can also be shared with the owner or with the final receiver of the cargo, so that he can also plan his reception slots or any other type of information he needs to make sure that these processes are more efficient. So basically, the first challenge and the first innovation about this is how we create this model where we make sure that everyone can connect in a simple way, which is simple and not expensive, and it can really share or receive the information that is necessary for him to properly do its job, and at the same time synchronizing the full process across the entire supply chain. So that's the main thing. And we had to come up with a few innovative concepts, such as creating a new type of architecture, which is basically open. Not only open in terms of the stakeholders in Portugal and in Spain, but also it's prepared to a future model where, for instance, the Portuguese system, the Portuguese logistics single window, is already prepared to share information, to share events with other systems in the world, such as port community systems, I don't know, Antwerp, Rotterdam, Singapore, and so on. So it was designed to be interoperable, it was designed to be open, it was designed to be collaborative. And that, in my view, is the main innovation about the logistics single window.
Yeah, because it has to be connected like that, because even though you're very good nationally, if you don't have insight regarding boats coming from everywhere around the world, you will be blind for a huge part of this transportation. And what is your vision to bring that to other major maritime countries?
Well, I think that a lot of companies are also waking up to this reality. So I would say that probably 90% of the port community systems are not yet prepared for that, but a few are already the most advanced, the most innovative, are preparing for that moment. So we have basically two sides of the chain which needed to be taken care of. One is the land side, and that's the transport modes, which are in Portugal, in Spain, the rail operators, the logistic platforms, and so on. That will be naturally handled and taken care of. So we are going to support this network, these corridors, and we make sure that all the relevant stakeholders are coming up to this model. But then we have the other side, which we call the foreland. And the foreland, we are already discussing and preparing integrations and cooperation models with a few port community systems and a few platforms that are consolidating events about shipping lines and so on. So this is will be built gradually. I mean, we know that, for instance, once we start, once we bring the logistic single window into production, we will probably have a few countries that will be cooperating with us. With these countries, we will be sharing tracking events, tracking information, maybe also some type of trade corridors where potentially also the authorities of both countries will cooperate. We'll start with a few, and as we believe that as time goes on, a few more will get into this type of approach and will be ready to cooperate with us. So it will be an ongoing process. It will start with just a few, but I believe that in a couple of years we'll be connected to most countries in the world.
At this point, do you get feedbacks from industries, manufacturers? Because when you're talking about cost reduction, optimization of logistic, we know they are very big on all the just-in-time approach. Do you think at one point manufacturers and industries will ask for it?
Yeah, definitely. As part of our business, we are constantly speaking to cargo owners and to industries. And a few years ago, I think we did a summary of all the meetings we had, and it was hundreds of meetings. And we realized that if you talk to, for instance, 10 producers or 10 industry decision makers and ask them, well, what are you looking for in the logistics process, in the platforms that are offered to you, which you currently do not have? And we realized that 9 out of 10 would say, well, I would like to have supply chain visibility. I want to know where my container is. Why don't I get that? And this was a couple of years ago. Today we continue doing that, and we realized that a few of them still give us that answer, but there are others that say, well, if I order something from Alibaba today, even if it's a 10 euro small thing, I get full tracking. Why is it that if I ship my 1 million container, I cannot get visibility? So that's one of the things that we need to solve. The first thing is visibility. And if you go to a survey from Gartner from last year, supply chain visibility is I think it's ranked 4 or 5 in the needs or the wishes of decision makers. And this includes not just supply chain, it also includes other things like basic management, financial type of wishes. So this is one key thing, and one of the first decisions that we want to make sure that we get into the logistics single window is that we want to give cargo owners, transport integrators and so on, full supply chain visibility, if possible, all the way to the door of the delivery, which also brings us another set of challenges, such as providing tools for the smaller carriers which have no technology. So that's one of the issue that we had to solve. And the other one is to make sure that all these companies involved in the supply chain create the collaborative mechanisms to turn the business into a more efficient process, where we cut all these inefficiencies I've talked about.
And I guess for them it's important to have this traceability on raw material on the way in, but also on shipments on the way out. So the challenge is like doubled there, because you have to integrate in and out.
Yes, it's two ways. It's in the case of the Interland, it's easier to fix because we can get in touch with all the relevant stakeholders and invite them and involve them in the process. When we are talking about the foreland, it's a lot more complicated. So we'll have a lot of work to do on that process, cooperating with other countries, with other platforms, and so on.
What is the next big challenge for MARLO?
Well, that's a good one. Well, it's I mean, the logistics single window. It's a pretty good one, a pretty big one, and we still have a lot of work to do until we finish it. So I would put this one in my top of priority, because we still need to go all the way until we have a production platform to the Portuguese ports according to the strategy of Portugal. So we are not thinking about a new one until we finish this.
Artur, good luck with that workload you just mentioned, and thank you a lot for your collaboration and your clear explanation on your project.
Thank you.